greenhouse gas or GHG. These are gases in the atmosphere that trap the sun's heat like a greenhouse and are known to be the leading cause of global warming. Scientists attribute the global warming trend observed since the mid-20th century to the human expansion of greenhouse effect. This is warming that results when the atmosphere traps heat radiating from Earth towards the space. In its fifth assessment report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a group of 1,300 independent scientific experts from countries all over the world, under auspice of United Nations, concluded that there is more than 95% probability that human activities over the past 50 years have warmed our planet. Take a look at the chart created by NASA that tracks carbon dioxide levels over millennia. You will notice that trend that hovers under 300 parts per million for 100,000 years and breaks out around 1950s. Carbon dioxide, or CO2, is one of the most predominant gases responsible for climate change. CO2 is produced when we drive our fossil fuel combustion vehicles or when we burn coal to generate energy. There are other gases that also fall under greenhouse gas definition. This include methane, CH4, largely produced by agriculture, nitrous oxide, N2O from manufacturing, HFCs, PFCs, SF6, but don't worry about memorizing this. In order to facilitate the measurement of GHG, these gases are converted into carbon dioxide equivalent using coefficient factors established by scientists. In the financial world, we refer to carbon footprint or GHG emissions. This represents the amount of greenhouse gases emitted converted into CO2 equivalent. So how can a company calculate its carbon footprint or its GHG emissions? There are frameworks and databases out there that allow specialists to convert companies' operational, accounting, and HR data into CO2 equivalent. Most recognized frameworks are GHG Protocol and ISO 14064. These two methodologies are similar in some ways. They classify emissions into direct and indirect emissions. However, they differ in how they break down indirect emissions in Scope 3. Most of the listed companies have to report their GHG emissions. GHG emissions data on companies is also sold by service providers such as Bloomberg, Sustainalytics, TrueCost, etc. GHG emissions are broken down into three parts. Scope 1, direct emissions, which are produced due to company generating or using energy, as well as GHG emitted by cars that they own. Scope 2, indirect emissions from purchased energy. This could be electricity bills, for example. Scope 3, all other indirect emissions. This category is very large and includes all consequences of company being in existence. GHG produced by the employees traveling to work. Extraction of resources in their value chain, emissions from manufacturing and transformation of their products by their suppliers, as well as GHG emitted from the land when the product is disposed and sent to the landfill. This image visually presents to you different sources of emissions and scope under which they fall by definition. Because of its complexity, most companies stop at evaluating their Scope 1 and 2 emissions, and some companies consider parts of Scope 3 emissions. An alternative method of evaluating environmental impact is to use life cycle assessment, or LCA. LCA is a technique to assess environmental impacts associated with all stages of the life cycle of commercial product, process, or service. In case of manufactured product, the life cycle assessment will look from raw material extraction and processing, which is the cradle, through the product manufacture, distribution, and use, all the way down to the recycling or final disposal of materials composing it, or the grave. LCA is very useful for companies to make an internal assessment and gain insightful information on how to reduce the environmental impact. Making this type of assessment can reveal information that will further help in decision-making for the company. Let's take a look at the example of Prana Snacks, who sell organic snacks such as nuts and dried fruits. This company is driven by triple P bottom line: people, profit, planet. They decide to complete their LC assessment and expected to see that the biggest part of their environmental impact came from plastic that they used for packaging of their goods. What they discovered is that the large majority of environmental impact came from the water usage of their suppliers because they were sourcing it at an extremely dry weather condition places. So they made necessary adjustments to realign their operations with their values.